So today, Clay, who is an Intune program manager, and me, Thomas, who is the HockeyApp group program manager, want to talk to you about modern enterprise applications with Microsoft Intune and HockeyApp. Mobile is transforming the way we live and work. The other day when I was flying here from Seattle, I was thinking, back to the day when we couldn't use mobile phones on the plane, especially not during takeoff and landing. And nowadays, I do everything on my phone, even during the flight. Now, of course, if you fly from Seattle to Atlanta for Ignite, the Wi-Fi is not really working because the plane is full of Microsoft people sneaking up all the bandwidth. As soon as I landed, though, in Atlanta, I texted my wife, like every good husband does, that I landed safely, and then I managed a lot of things only on my phone. I checked all my email, I chatted with my team on Slack, I checked my hotel reservation, I got an Uber to drive to the hotel, and we also reserved a restaurant for dinner. I can no longer live without my phone, and my phone is essential for both my personal life and my business. And employees actually use their phones today at their workplace as much as they use the Surface or MacBook that they get from Microsoft. But the mobile revolution isn't starting. It actually has already happened. The mobile revolution is 10 times faster than the PC revolutions of the 80s. It is 2 times faster than the internet boom of the 90s, and 3 times faster than the social network revolution. Mobile has happened, and it has changed the way we live and our expectations. This is a Gartner quote that I like very much. The future of customer experiences hinges on an excellent mobile app experience. This experience must be immersive and personal and will require IT leaders to increase investment in data science and predictive analytics. The really significant shift isn't just in the numbers. It is what our customers expect from us today. They demand from our apps that they have a great experience. They want immersive and deeply personal experiences, and they really expect apps that look ahead, that process data in real time and predict what I want to do. And so with that change in expectations, our business have to change. Many businesses had already started with a mobile transition a while back with some consumer apps, and they learned the hard way what challenges it is to develop a mobile app. When the iPhone came out, there was the slogan, "There's an app for that." And all of a sudden, users realized that what a mobile phone enables for them. Uber is a classic example of this. Such an app wasn't possible before the mobile revolution. I simply couldn't call a taxi anywhere, wherever I was. Businesses have to do the same transition. They have to transition from a single app strategy to a mobile app, from a single app to a mobile app strategy. We call this the appification of the modern business. The rise of highly specialized targeted apps that cover the use cases of small groups within the enterprise and also certain tasks, like for example, the other day I was approving VPN access for one of my team members. Now, how does the transition look like from a single app business into an appified business with lots of apps? Here at Microsoft, we actually have the same problem. We have both a consumer business where we ship our own apps to millions of customers like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, or modern communication apps like Skype, or stuff like Power Apps, which in itself is a container that helps me to deploy my line of business applications. But we also have lots of internal apps that we use to run our business, and even simple things like booking a shuttle from building 27 to building 18. By learning from those experiences with our own consumer apps and our own processes, we have developed what we call the mobile app lifecycle, or short mobile DevOps. It all starts on my Mac or PC, where you can code an app in Visual Studio, in Xamarin Studio, or really any IDE that you prefer. We have you covered on Xcode, or on Android Studio, or even in a Linux editor. Once you as a developer pick an item from the backlog and implement code, you hopefully push your code into a repository, and that's when the automated build process starts. As part of mobile DevOps, we really want to change the mindset that every single commit creates a build. We want to fail fast within minutes or even seconds and find issues quickly. Now, as part of build, or more generally as continuous integration, we also run our unit tests, but running unit tests just in a simulator is no longer enough. We run the test in a test cloud on thousands of real devices. And of course, we distribute our apps to all of our employees and our test groups outside the company through a tool like HockeyApp. Once the app is deployed on the device, we want to, of course, make sure that everything is secured. Here at Microsoft, we not only are worried about leaking our own apps, we are also worried about company data that lives in those apps. Take, for example, Word that accesses secret company documents through SharePoint. To secure those apps, we communicate with the cloud and use Intune MDM and Intune MAM to make sure that everything is protected on the device. And while we're on the device, we also want to monitor the quality and usage of our app through crash reporting, through usage analytics that covers users and session metrics, and we want to engage with our users, be it through an email or through an in-app feedback form where the developer and the employee of the company can directly exchange information about the app. And all those monitoring steps hopefully link back into our backlog, into our work item system, create a ticket there, and so we close the mobile DevOps loop, and the developer can start a new iteration based on all that information that he got from the testing. Now, we have that mobile DevOps process, but first we need to pick tools to create the mobile apps. And there are today 3 mobile approaches out there: hybrid and web, platform-specific, and cross-platform native. Hybrid and web is one of the approaches that started early in the iOS lifecycle or Android lifecycle to enable cross-platform apps. Typical examples are Cordova or PhoneGap, where the app that you launch from your home screen really is a web view that runs JavaScript, HTML, and CSS inside that web view. The downside of that web approach is that the apps are usually slow, and you are not up to date with the newest UI patterns because my web interface is not directly based on the native UI platform like UIKit. The second approach is platform-specific, which means you code your app either in Swift and Objective-C, in C# for Windows, or in Java for Android, and so you come out with 3 different code bases that possibly 3 different teams in your company have to maintain. There's rarely that one developer really manages to implement code in those 3 or 4 languages. On the upside, though, performance is great, people love it, and compared to the web approach, they notice clearly the difference between the 2 development styles. And then the third one is the cross-platform native approach, and the most famous company that did this was Xamarin, which we acquired earlier this year. Another example is React Native. Both of those frameworks enable the same kind of flow where you use a different language, in the case of Xamarin C#, in case of React Native JavaScript, but you're coding against the native APIs. The language is just another runtime on top of those APIs. So you get the same quality, the same performance, the same experience, but at the same time, you have the same code base across iOS, Android, and Windows. We think that third approach is superior to the other approaches, but of course, at Microsoft, we have a lot of legacy. So in reality, we develop at Microsoft in all 3 ways. Once you have picked, there's a related session, so if you want to learn more about Xamarin, there's a session tomorrow at 9 a.m. from James Montemagno, who can show you everything from start to finish for developing a Xamarin cross-platform app. Now, once you have picked your development approach, you need to put a little DevOps in it, like my friend Donovan Brown would say. And our tools for DevOps are Visual Studio Team Services and Team Foundation Server. The difference between those 2 tools really is that one is installed on-premise, Team Foundation Server, and one is installed in the cloud, Visual Studio Team Services. When we speak about Visual Studio Team Services, we really mean both products. Visual Studio Team Services gives you all the tools you need to handle your agile process. It starts with the planning tools, and your project starts with an idea that hopefully results into a work item or in stories in Visual Studio Team Services. No matter if you like Scrum boards or Kanban boards, a simple backlog, or a sophisticated story, feature, and item list, we have you covered. And of course, you can create custom fields and custom flows if you prefer this. Once you have all your work items and your developers start writing code, you want to push that code into version control. And Visual Studio Team Service gives you two types of version control, either Git, which is distributed across different machines, or Visual Studio version control, which is the old-fashioned centralized approach. And then third, once you have your code in your repository, you want to start building apps. And here is where it becomes fascinating how far we have come with Microsoft. Our build agents run on every single platform, be it Linux, Windows, or Mac OS, and you literally can build every app from a web app, a Node app, up to iOS, Android, or Windows. No matter what you want to do, Visual Studio Team Services has you covered. Now you say, oh, that's one tool that covers everything. That's the typical Microsoft login. No. You can use every single vertical independently and exchange the tools you prefer, the verticals you prefer with other tools. For example, for build, you can use Jenkins. For version control, you can use GitHub instead of the built-in Git. No matter what you do, the important thing is you have a tool that supports your DevOps process. Now, I finished with build here as a third vertical, but there's really one more feature in Visual Studio Team Services I want to cover here, which is called release management. Release management stitches everything together. From your work item to your code to your build, release management gives you the traceability that you need as a company. And once your build is completed and all the tests are green, you can automatically release your build into HockeyApp or even push it to the App Store. Now you say, I don't want all my developers to be able to push the app into the App Store. So what do? You can define post and pre-approvers for every single environment. So for example, after my internal build has been pushed to GitHub, my manager gets an email approving the next environment in release management. If you want to learn more over this, there was a session on Tuesday called Embrace DevOps for Your Next Project, and it's available as a video on the Ignite homepage. Okay, so we have the basics covered. Now, how do we test mobile apps manually and automatically at Microsoft? And the real answer is automated testing is a must. There is no way any company can test all the configurations, all the APIs, all the backend integrations, be it your staging or production environment, or the third-party libraries that you're using. I just read a minute ago, or not a minute, an hour ago, that, for example, React Native has over 600 dependencies. Nobody can test that manually anymore. You need an automated testing solution, and we have a solution here at Microsoft called Xamarin Test Cloud. Xamarin Test Cloud lets us automate our testing on thousands of real devices that are connected to the cloud. I simply go into the Xamarin Test Cloud web interface, I pick the devices I prefer, and I can use, for example, market data to pick the top 10 iPhones or the top 100 Android devices. But I can also go back to old devices that run a certain version of the operating system because we never update those devices in the cloud. Our DNS server blocks the update request. So when you want to go back to an iPhone 4 with iOS 6, you can do so with Xamarin Test Cloud. The most important thing, though, is that Test Cloud tests the app in the same way your users would do. We have several test frameworks like Xamarin UI Test, Calabash, and soon Appium that you can use to write UI tests that virtually tap the buttons on the screen on every single device in parallel. This way, you can reproduce certain bugs. You can run the same tests that ran in your simulator on the cloud, and you can find issues early. And of course, it's fully integrated with Visual Studio Team Services, so all your builds during your continuous integration process go into Test Cloud and give you the results you need to decide about the next quality gate. Oops, sorry. And there's a session for that as well tomorrow, Create UI Automated Testing for iOS and Android mobile apps with Xamarin Test Cloud. Now that all our tests are green, our app is integrated, our code is in version control, we want to ship the app to our users. And here at Microsoft, most teams ship builds daily or more often to all employees using HockeyApp. HockeyApp gives you all the information you need to create high-quality apps with 3 different features: distribution, monitoring, and engagement. To talk more about distribution, I want to look back a little bit 5 years when we founded 5 years ago, when we founded HockeyApp, the world looked very different. when we wanted to send a build to a client, the client had to connect his iPhone to the iTunes instance that had the whole media library installed. So I couldn't even sync my phone at work. I had to go home because that's where all my videos and music was living. It was a really cumbersome process, but even more so, it was often unclear why that process failed, what version the client had, and what issues appeared along the way. This is why we created HockeyApp, because you can now distribute builds in second over the air, and you're almost always informed what build was installed. HockeyApp leverages the native capabilities to install builds over the air, introduced in iOS 4, available in Android, and introduced with Windows Phone 8. It is really easy to upload a build to our web UI, but we also offer integrations, APIs, and of course, a plugin for VSTS to automatically push your build from your build pipeline into your distribution pipeline. One key feature that we launched was in-app update alerts. So whoever is using your app is almost always informed that a new build is available and is not stuck on an older build. By simply pressing show in that screenshot and then tapping install, you can update to the latest version available on HockeyApp. The SDK for HockeyApp is fully open source and supports all platforms like iOS, Android, Windows, and Mac. Earlier this year, we added integration with Azure Active Directory, which makes it really easy for all company employees in an Active Directory to sign into HockeyApp and see all the apps that are available to their security groups. Now, side loading is still a rather complicated process, so I have that slide here that shows a little bit how the different platforms handle side loading. On Android, things are fairly easy because really any certificate works, so nobody has to find or pay a certificate. All the user has to do is enable unknown sources, and by setting this setting, they can install any app like you're used from Windows 95 or any exe file that you could install in the past. On iOS and macOS, you need a certificate through the Apple Developer Program, and then you are limited to a number of UDIDs if you're using ad hoc provisioning. The exception, though, is that Apple offers also the Enterprise Provisioning Program, which has an unlimited number of devices, so it's perfect for companies like Microsoft with over 100,000 employees. The only downside is that we can only use the Enterprise program for the employees of our company and not for people outside. On Mac, there's a little side story. If you use something called Developer ID, you can sign a build and then ship it to all your customers outside the Mac App Store. Apple introduced that option simply to make it possible what was possible before the introduction of the App Store, shipping apps outside through their own sales channel. And then on Windows, the story is split between desktop and phone. On the Windows desktop, I can still install any app I want, but if it's a UWP app, I have to install the certificate first. On phone, I also need a paid certificate, for example, from Symantec. Now, I already mentioned on iOS that there is two different ways, ad hoc distribution and in-house distribution, and we really want to focus on in-house distribution here because that's the most important story for enterprises. But I've listed two other stories here, Test Flight and the App Store. Now, you would say, why is the App Store a testing mechanism? Simply because companies are stretching what is possible today. If you look at, for example, Facebook, they're shipping a single new App Store build every 2 weeks. So me as a customer is always on the latest build, always on a very fresh build. And then in between those 2 weeks, they use feature flags to enable even more features to really enable a continuous stream of value to their users. So the App Store is kind of like the end story of your continuous delivery pipeline with no limits whatsoever, all features available. And the only downside is you still have to go through the Apple review, which can take all between 3 and 14 days. In between HockeyApp and the App Store is a tool from Apple called Test Flight, which offers you to distribute your app to 2,000 testers externally, with the downside that the build expires after 60 days. So you have a wide variety of tools available to ship your app to your customers on iOS, and you can use HockeyApp for all of them to monitor your apps. Even more so, here at Microsoft, we use all 4 different distribution mechanisms to test and ship our apps. We start with a very limited set of testers in-house with ad hoc distribution, go all the way to all employees with in-house distribution, test with external testers using Test Flight, and then, of course, we ship our builds to the App Store. So enough of the talking. I want to give you a little demo about app testing, how an app built in Xamarin can be tested and distributed through HockeyApp. And Clay remembered which number my laptop was.
That's my job.
So I've opened my solution here in Xamarin Studio. I'm not the developer of this app. I'm playing the management IT role here. This app is called Coffee Tip, was developed by one of our Xamarin evangelists, and helps me to determine how much tip I'm giving the coffee artist in the coffee shop. In the IDE, I want to show you 3 simple things. The first one is we have integrated the HockeyApp NuGet package to get in-app updates for my app. And it's really those 4 lines here that help me to integrate and initialize the HockeyApp SDK. Those lines can be easily copied from the Xamarin NuGet description, and all I need to do is paste in this ID. And the developer already did this for me, so I really have nothing to do here. The second is how easy it is to run my tests in Test Cloud. So I pick here on the side, so you can see on the left side here, it's a little bit small. You can see my test target, and the developer has defined a couple of tests in C#. It's a Xamarin project using Xamarin UI test for testing. So you can see, for example, he's testing a drip coffee, he's running the app, he is clearing the total, and then he's going through the UI to figure out how much a drip coffee for $4 should be tipped. To run those tests, I can open the unit test sidebar here. I right-click on the coffee tip target and can say run test to run the test locally in my machine, but I can also say run in Test Cloud. And if I do this, and I have to pick the device first, not the simulator. If I do this again, I get to pick whether I want to run iOS or Android tests. And that's really all I need to do. It now is building the IPA file, uploading the IPA file to Test Cloud, and then on Test Cloud, I get to pick which devices I want to run my tests on. While this is working, I want to show you a second thing, which is HockeyApp and how easy it is to upload a build manually. And that's really convenient if your company is, for example, in a hackathon where you have a simple prototype that you want to quickly ship to your team. So here's the HockeyApp login page, and as I'm a Microsoft employee with AAD access, I can simply use my work or school account to sign in. Now let's see, that's the most risky demo. Yeah, great, no 2-factor authentication. I get into the HockeyApp dashboard, and here I see all the apps that are available to me as a Microsoft employee. I can simply filter this dashboard. For example, I'm only interested in iOS apps here, and then I can also say I only want to see those apps where I'm the developer. So I do this, and now I have filtered down my dashboard. I see my coffee tip app here. I can click on it, and to upload a new build, all I have to do is drag and drop an IPA file from my desktop or any folder onto the web UI. The build uploads, is processed, all the metadata is extracted, like the icon, the minimum OS version, the package ID, and then I can put in release notes and release that build to my testers. Now, this is the manual process, very easy to use when you want to start with a new project, and actually requires nothing else than the IPA file and a valid HockeyApp account. The third thing I want to do is, back here in Xamarin Studio, is I want to, and now the test cloud upload is finished, I show that in a second. I want to push a commit into my repository. So here in Xamarin Test Cloud, we have integration with version control. I want to review all my changes here. I did a little change. I'm not a developer, so I did only a little change to the info plist. I'm changing a string that is shown when the photo library is accessed. I commit this change here. It's a small change. And then go back into version control and push the changes into the remote repository. So I have to pick my key here. And now what's happening is that Xamarin Studio pushes my solution into the GitHub repository. Visual Studio Team Services, which my developers luckily have set up, sees that webhook from GitHub and automatically starts the build for me. And to show you this, I go over here into Visual Studio Team Services. That's my simple project. I go into the build step here, and if magic has happened, hopefully a build was triggered. Yeah, you can see here, just a few seconds ago, a new build was started and is now compiling my Xamarin Studio app on a remote agent using our build technology. You can see the build is actually already finished, And now build is finished. Next thing that happens is the build is uploaded through release management to HockeyApp. So similar here, you can see automatically a release was triggered. The environment is blue in the moment, which means in progress. And the build is uploaded to HockeyApp. The internet's actually super fast, so that's great. So it's now initializing the agent that uploads the build to HockeyApp. While this is running, I go back to my test cloud run that I had started earlier. I sign in here to my test cloud account, and I show you quickly how the UI looks to pick a test. So I go here into new test run. I pick my app, and then I have all the devices in a simple picker that are available to me for iOS testing. I can say I want to test the phone app, and I want to only use devices on iOS 10 and iOS 9, and then I can pick, for example, this iPhone 5S here, an iPhone 5C, and let's see, an iPhone SE, and select those 3 devices and start my tests. The tests are executed in parallel, and I can show you how the results look going back here. Here are all my tests run. You can see in the early stages when I prepped that talk, some tests were failing, some were successful. The latest is successful. I can go into the test cloud test report, click on a test report, and see each device that this app was tested on. So that's a white iPhone 5S and a black iPhone 5. I can click on the device. I can see the screenshot with the app, and I can even open the screenshot in full size. So if I just need a quick screenshot, test cloud is always there for me to get that screenshot and send it to a team member of me. Okay, so hopefully my Visual Studio test, my release run is finished. Yes, everything is great. So I go back here to my app on HockeyApp, and I can see here my last build that I uploaded was at 4:30 p.m. So now switching, let me find where did I? So switching over to the device, how does it look from the end user perspective? And if you have an iPhone, you can actually try it out yourself by opening this quick URL here on your phone and do the same steps I did with installing the app. So here you have my real phone I have my real phone here connected to my Mac, and the first thing I want to do is install HockeyApp on the phone. So I do this by opening install.hockeyapp.net, tap install. I go through a simple configuration process that installs the HockeyApp icon on my phone and also collects all the device data, like the device ID, from the phone and sends it back to HockeyApp. And once I did this, I see all the apps that are available on this phone for me to install. So here's my coffee tip app. I tap that first row. I tap the install button, and I can install the app right on the device over the air. So you can see it loading here. It's installing, yada, yada, yada. Here's my app. And now Apple made it a little bit more complicated for enterprise developers with iOS 8. So first time I do this, only for the first time, I see that dialog. And Apple intentionally doesn't give us a way to fix this. I have to figure that out myself. So I click cancel here. I go into settings. Let me show you this. I'm already in general profile and device management. And I have to trust the developer. So I do this. Now the developer is trusted. And if I go back, I can open my app. And now I have deployed an app automatically from my code through source control, through build release management onto the real device within a few minutes. And here's my actual app. The way it works is I enter how much the coffee is. If I am at Starbucks, there's no tip at all. And if my coffee is tempered, which I didn't know what that means actually until the other day, is that they press the espresso coffee before dripping water on it. It's 50 cents more. Now, and I can pick the coffee type. So let's say I do espresso here, and I do tempered, and then my tip actually doesn't go up. I don't know. Should be like this. The other thing I want to show you here is I want to force a crash. So if I pick cold brew, which I hate, then the app is crashing. And next time I launch the app, I can send a crash report back to HockeyApp. So I tap send report here, and now a crash report is sent back to my HockeyApp. If you don't want that dialog and you want to automatically send crash reports, which we often do inside of Microsoft, you can remove that dialog and auto-send. For production releases, we don't recommend this, especially because of international privacy concerns. The other thing I want to show you is I want to provide feedback as a user that I don't like something about the app. So I can shake the phone, and it brings up a feedback sheet. I actually don't want to give the developer my name and email, so I just ignore this. What has happened, though, while I shook the phone, a screenshot was taken, so I have a screenshot here. I can edit the screenshot, and I can now use my finger to annotate it. So I can, for example, say, I don't like this design, and I don't want to tell you, I want to hide personal data, and I don't want to tell you that I like drip coffee. And the way it works is basically we add a little noise over the field so you can hide out your PIN code or your account number or your name. And then I give them, here's some feedback, and click send. And now feedback goes to HockeyApp. HockeyApp creates a work item in VSTS, and all my developers get notified that some user has provided feedback and they better engage with the user to make him happy. As I said, you can try it out yourself right now through aka.ms codetip and install the app on your phone.
aka.ms/cotip. You can actually go right now and download it, and as we're going through this, you're going to see some things going on with the app in real time.
Okay, now we have distributed our app to the users. We want to monitor quality and crash reporting. I've already shown you the end user experience to send crashes, but in fact, while using the app, I was also collecting telemetry. For users, for monitoring and learning, there's two basic questions we as Microsoft want to answer. Number one is how many users are using my app, how often and which features are they using. Number two, where is my app crashing and how many users are affected by those crashes. In addition to this, we want to enable you as our customers to dig through raw data, export the raw data into an Azure storage blob, and connect it to your business systems like Power BI. We have two products working together for this. One is HockeyApp, and the other one is Application Insights. Now, I already talked a lot about HockeyApp delivery. The second feature, or the next feature on HockeyApp here is monitoring. With our open source SDK, you can track crashes, users, sessions, custom events, and more importantly, crash reports that are fully symbolicated. Symbolication means that instead of seeing random memory addresses, you actually get to see your class names, method names, file names, and line numbers with a full stack trace that you can work with. And of course, we are again connected into Visual Studio Team Services, so the crash report or crash group creates a ticket in my ticketing system.
In a few minutes, I'm going to show you how to protect the app, but just as a note, with Intune and with Mobile Application Manager, we don't get this telemetry, and this is why, to me, HockeyApp, one of the many reasons why HockeyApp is so valuable is this telemetry. But I am going to talk to you in a few minutes about how we protect the data.
Okay, and then if you don't like a feature or you have your own monitoring solution, your own Google Analytics, for example, you can individually disable all the features in the SDK to similar to VSTS. We don't lock you into anything. You pick what features you want to use. The second product is Application Insights, which is focused on server and service monitoring, but also offers features for raw data analysis. And what we are doing is that we are connecting our HockeyApp app into Application Insights to allow you to use the powerful query language that comes with Application Insights to query over all the data. You can correlate data between your services and your clients, and you can continuously export that data into Azure Storage and then do whatever you want to do with it. You get the full data that was sent by the SDK in Application Insights, both analytics and a continuous export. And again, there's another related session, was earlier today, should be available as a video tomorrow. Dig into terabytes of your application logs with ad hoc queries and Application Insights. So here's a quick second demo of how application analytics works with HockeyApp and Application Insights. So here's my HockeyApp dashboard again, and we haven't scrolled down so far. So if I actually scroll down here, I can see my HockeyApp metrics right there on the app page. I can see that the app was crashing 5 times in the last 7 days, had 30 downloads, so that was you guys in the room, 38 users, and 86 sessions. If I click on one of those boxes, I can actually see the data for 30 days. I can hover over those bars and see how many users have used the app today. And further down below, you can see how many new users were using the app today. I can also dig into crash reports here and see all my symbolicated crash reports. You can see we group similar crashes together, so that top line item had 4 crashes and 1 user was affected. That was me while demoing the app. I can click on a crash group and again get a lot of metrics about this. So this is actually a simulator crash. You can see this here by the x86. That's my Mac. This crash has only happened one time. 1 user was affected and 1 operating system, which is iOS 10. If I scroll further down, I see a fully symbolicated stack trace. This is a Xamarin stack trace. I can see my crash happened in the update tip method in line 125. I can further drill into all raw crash logs. So if I click on that crash logs tab on the top, I can see the full crash logs with all the stack traces for all the threads. So if you have a random bug where you don't know what's happening, you can actually investigate what's happening in all the background threads as well as the main thread and the crash thread. If you go even further down, you can even see the hex values of your registers, so you can see what's happening there. If you have very inside knowledge as a game developer, you can really use that data to get a better understanding of your crash. And as I've mentioned, you can link the crash group into your bug tracker. So right now, this app has no bug tracker configured because I wanted to show you how many bug trackers we support. So actually, Visual Studio Team Services is here down the list, but we also support Jira, GitLab, GitHub, whatever you prefer, we have you covered. In addition to this, we also support webhooks. So my team, for example, uses Slack for notifications and team chat, and we have connected all our apps into Slack. So whenever a crash appears, we get a notification in Slack and are immediately aware of any quality issue or user feedback. Now, if I go back here to the overview page, I can see the aggregate data for users and sessions, but I can't really drill into the raw data and do some more analysis. And for this, we have Application Insights Analytics, which I have here. So this is the analytics dashboard that comes with Application Insights. It is, you can imagine this as a database. It's a NoSQL database, and I can run my own queries on top of the database in real time. So my table for custom events is called custom events. So I can just type custom events and run this, and I can see the raw data for all my, I can see the raw data for all my custom events. So here you see my custom events. I can actually, this is a table of all my events. You can, for example, see here if somebody tapped on Starbucks, I'm logging in an event with a custom dimension that shows me the total and the tip. So the total was 250 here, and the tip was 0. I can also scroll to the right to see this was used on an iPad in the United States. For some of the events, I actually get to see the city and the state. And I also get to see IP addresses and client operating system. So now I want to filter this further down, but because the demo data is so limited, I actually show you a different app with much more data. So I go here over to another app. That's the Xamarin Evolve app from the Evolve conference that we had in April. And that has over 100,000 custom events, so it's really fun to dig into this data. So I go here into this tab, and the first thing I want to do is just want to show you how quick it is to actually, query over all those events. So that shows me all the events. The app has 186,000 events, so we just got a list from all those events. It's limited to 10,000 records, but it's still super fast. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to scope this down to only the events that have happened in the last 14 days. So I do this here, I run this again, and now I'm only getting data for 14 days, so I'm down to 6,200 records. And then I want to summarize the count of this by the client OS. So I want to see how many of my users were using what version of the operating system. And I click go again, and now I get a table that shows me the operating system. I can actually sort here, so you can see iOS 10.0.1 was used by 3,278 users. I can also go further here and render this as a pie chart. And so now I get to see my pie chart, and I can see 50% of my users were already on iOS 10 in the last 14 days. Now I want to compare this with historic data that were before those 14 days. So I open a new tab. Oops. And duplicate here my timestamp query. Oops. And say I want to have the data from less than 14 days for the last 60 days. And I run this again, and I render my pie chart, and you get what you would expect. Nobody was on iOS 10 except for a few developers using the app. It's a conference app, right? So some developers were already on iOS 10, and the majority was using iOS 9.3.5 and followed by 9.3.4. Now this is cool. I can dig through my data. I can create charts. What do I do with those charts? Because I really don't want to do that over and over again. I can either pin them to my Azure dashboard, or I can also export that data into a Power BI query. And if I do this, I get the full Power BI query that you can use in Power Query and Excel to pin it to your Power BI dashboard. In this way, we have now closed the loop from committing code into our code repository, creating a build, running tests in the cloud, shipping it to all our employees, monitoring the data, analyzing it from a developer perspective, all the way to my management that can see the data on their Power BI dashboard, so in the morning they get the full overview about the app. Okay, back to slides. And Clay is on.
All right, thanks, Thomas. So just a really quick, 10-second background on myself. I basically started Microsoft in Microsoft IT. And one of the first things that I was tasked with was looking at our non-Windows platforms and looking at how we're distributing apps. So one of the things I immediately noticed is we had a problem. So you're going to see here we have 9 different ways, and these are just the tip of the iceberg that I found as I started digging that we are distributing apps internally. So you'll see Company Portal there, which is the one I prefer on using Intune. Corporate websites, Power Apps, IT Dev Center, file shares, you get the picture. If you have a lot of developers in your organization, this is probably, or your company, this is probably pretty familiar to you. So the results of this problem were this. We started having apps that were leaking out constantly. You'll see just about every single one of these was in a 1-month time period last year. And it got worse and worse, and had many conversations. And one of the things I did was I actually started pulling a bunch of the developers together, and I knew Thomas by that time, and we said, hey, we're actually going to start restricting how you can distribute apps. And I heard somebody laugh really loud in the back of the room, and anyone guess who that was? It was Thomas. And he's like, yeah, not going to happen. We've got to work together. So we actually started looking at this problem together, and Thomas and I started working on a solution, and we started consolidating. And I knew how good HockeyApp was, and we started really, looking at this internally, and everyone was like, wow, this is amazing. It's a great tool. We actually started replacing all of these 9 different ways that people were getting apps. We basically dropped it down to HockeyApp as with our apps portal, and then also Intune with Company Portal. So, and I'm going to show you kind of how that process went really quickly. So, just to kind of give you an overview of the way we do our app development lifecycle, basically when a developer submits an app, we have 3 different rings. We have ring 0, which is basically the team level, ring 1, which is an organizational type distribution, and ring 2, which is actually company-wide in our beta testing, what we call our dog food application development lifecycle, and our app publishing lifecycle for our dog food apps. And for those 3 rings, you basically have to go through privacy sign-off, check off first that you have met these requirements. When you get to ring 0 and ring 1, you're basically going to have to go through a very minimum set of requirements because you're distributing to your team. Once you get to ring 2, it gets much more strict. But this is basically the way that after we started working through this, I can tell you when it started, it didn't look even close to like this, but this was kind of mid-range, where we started basically saying we have to have a virus malware scan, even if it's going to your team or to your organization. Then it's going to go through HockeyApp. Depending on what type of app you have, it would go through 2 different channels and go through a code signing process that we had internally at Microsoft, and then it would go out to Company Portal for distribution internally, and that's kind of the way that we had started going. We started trying to simplify this even more. So we basically realized that you have an app team, you have that's where you start, and then you want to publish to the store. So we said, you know what, let's start by uploading the build into HockeyApp. We're going to do our malware and virus scanning. If the scan fails, then it's going to, of course, not continue on. If it doesn't fail, it's going to get published to the store. Sorry about that. And then it's going to go out to your users externally. With our scanning, don't want to go into too much detail here. I will tell you this is proprietary, internal to Microsoft, but just to kind of give you an idea of the way we do things, like when an app gets scanned before it gets published to our company-wide, it basically goes through a scan. I'm not going to go through each one of these things, but it basically goes through, it gets a pass or fail. If it passes, it continues to the public app store. If it fails, it goes back to the developer to get fixed. And we are scanning for multiple things. We're scanning for malicious code. We're scanning for privacy issues, things like that, things that the app shouldn't be looking for. That's what we're looking for when we're doing the code scanning.
The key here, though, is, I want to point that out specifically, is that while our scanning is proprietary, we're using a HockeyApp and its API and its SDK as the center of the app developer universe. So without interfering with the developer processes that want to upload builds quickly and don't want IT to fight against them, we let them do that, and then we use the HockeyApp API and AAD to access those builds in the background, scan them, and then push a notification to the development team and disable the build on HockeyApp if we actually found something, which happens really rarely. But we want to have that confidence and security inside of our company.
Correct. OK, so the next question was, how do we secure the apps we distribute? And this is really where the Intune piece comes into the picture. So the Enterprise Mobility and Security Suite, which does contain Intune, is really the way that we did this. And with this, we basically started looking at all the different ways that users access data. And we started looking at it holistically at the big picture. And we said, we've got users that we need to protect. We have devices we need to protect. We have apps we need to protect. And then we also need to protect data at the document layer. And when you look at the device layer, that's when you're really going to manage the whole device. A lot of times you get a lot of kickback on things like Big Brother, especially when you deal like developers like Thomas here. When you start telling them you're going to be managing their whole device, they have to go through this enrollment process every time they want to install one of their apps or every time they flash their device, which they do a lot. They're not really happy about that. And what do? They find ways around it. They find ways to, they just stop using your internal tools, and they basically, it's not going to be protected. So we started looking at the app level at that point. And we started saying, we've got these applications that don't have mobile application management. There is personal and company data intermingled. The company data might be stored in personal apps. It might be transferred to third-party apps. We really don't know if that's occurring or not. Actually, we know it's occurring. We don't really have a way to track that or stop it. With MAM, we can actually say that you can't cut copy-paste in between protected apps with mobile application management. We can set access policy settings for at the app layer, like PIN. We can require a full login, which I'm going to show you here in just a second in a demo. And then we can also step it up if we do decide to do that and do the full device management and push out things like VPN profiles, Wi-Fi profiles, really lock down the whole device if we have to. We also took it a step further and we said, you know what? Even at the app layer, we want to look at, we know that you're logging in for personal reasons. We know that you're logging into the app for corporate reasons. Let's divide that up. So we basically moved into what we call the multi-identity policy direction, where you have the corporate data, you have your personal data. Depending on how you log into the app, that's going to be how we protect the data. So if you're logged in with your personal account, you're not going to really see any difference. If you log in with your corporate account, like with us at Microsoft.com, then it's going to put the app restrictions in place at the app layer. So I'm going to kind of show you how this ties in with what Thomas just said. So basically, okay, so you see here I'm in the Microsoft Azure portal, and I'm in the Intune section of that. I've got app policy here, and what I'm going to do is actually, first of all, upload my line of business app. So Thomas showed you the coffee tip app, and you're going to see here, it's as easy as adding the name of the app. You can pull the app identifier, and HockeyApp actually makes that very easy. It makes it, you literally click Edit. There's your app identifier right there in HockeyApp. Put the app identifier in. I've already got it loaded for the sake of the demo. It uploads in less than 2 minutes, the information. You hit Create, you choose your platform, and that's done. That's really all you have to do to get your line of business app. Once it's wrapped with the Intune wrapper, It's as easy as adding it in, adding the app identifier in, and then applying your policy. So let's choose which policy we want. We're going to come in, we're going to choose which apps. So if we look here, we have our targeted apps. It's as easy as choosing the coffee tip app. As soon as you put that app identifier in, you're going to see that the app that you loaded is going to show up here in the list of targeted apps. You choose coffee tip. You choose what settings you want. This is where you can actually get very granular at the app layer and say that we want to prevent that app from uploading data from iTunes to iTunes and iCloud. We're going to say that we want to require a PIN before the user can get into the app. Or we can say allow or disallow fingerprint. If you do have an app that is very top secret, an alpha app, and we do have quite a few of those at Microsoft right now, you can actually say that you want to require a full corporate login every time the user opens up the app. And you can also allow it to wipe the app data if they fail that attempt multiple times. So I have my policy set, and then I just assign my user group. In this case, it's just my demo group. So I choose the group that I want to assign it to. I can choose any group in Active Directory, and now I'm going to show you what that looks like for the end user.
And what we have done in the meantime is, Clay already mentioned it a little bit, is that to get those features in our demo app, we had to wrap the app with the Intune SDK. And that is not a process where you have to actually go into the code and add lines of code and stuff like that. You simply download the Intune wrapper tool. You give it the IPA file, which is the app package for iOS, or the APK file, which is the app package for Android. And the wrapper tool does all the magic with your IPA file. It extracts the current binary, adds the Intune mem wrapper around it, and re-signs the binary. You re-upload that build to HockeyApp, and if you have done the demo on your own device, you should see now an update is available for the Coffee Tip app, and Clay will install that same update on his iPad, and then all of a sudden, all those security features are enabled without any need for code, for development, or any breaking out of our process. The same mobile DevOps process that we have shown earlier applies to those Intune secured apps.
So you'll see here on my iPad, I have my typical Microsoft apps that are protected with mobile application management, but you'll see Coffee Tip as well. So this particular version of Coffee Tip doesn't actually have, you can see I could log in, there was no PIN requirement, etc. But while I was sitting here, Thomas was actually updating the app in real time on his device and updating it with the Intune MAM wrapper to be able to apply the MAM-only policy. So you'll see here he's updated the app. He can automatically require my device to update or to pop up and show update. He can, if he so chooses, take the ignore option away to where I only have an option to update. So I'm going to click show. I'm going to update my app here real time in a demo, which is always risky. And you're going to see that my app is going to very quickly update on my device. So now, when I go to update or to load my app,
it's still loading.
It's still loading here in the top left. Give me just a second.
No.
You're going to see that now when it launches, Thomas has wrapped it with the Intune MAM wrapper, and now it's asking me to set a PIN on my device. So it's actually saying to access company data with this app, set a PIN. So let's try to set a PIN. I did allow simple PIN, so it let me do a very simple one, so you didn't know my actual PIN for the demo. But you can choose to allow it to only, or to only allow complex PINs where you can't repeat numbers. So you'll see here, I have the app, I set a PIN. Now every time I go to open that app in the future, it's going to require me to put in a PIN. If I try to copy data out of the app and copy it into another app, it's going to prevent that unless it's another policy managed app. So if it's Word, PowerPoint, Excel, I can actually copy data back and forth. I can transfer data back and forth. But because it is wrapped, I can't copy data to like Notepad or WordPad from the app. On Android, you can even go as far as blocking screenshots within the app using the MAM SDK. iOS doesn't make that available at the app layer. But for Android, we can actually prevent things like a screenshot on your, once again, your super secret dog food or beta apps for Android. So we have that there, and just to kind of give you an example of other things you can do, if you had a link within the app, and you wanted to say that that link can only be opened from a secure browser, we can actually require, you will know my pin here for this app, you will actually be able to require that that app, or that the app opens that link within the managed browser. So you see here I have super secret Death Star plans. I'm going to open those. It's going to force my device to open it in the managed browser. I can restrict what the user can do, and I can actually, once again, keep them from copying and pasting from the app to other apps. All right. So switch back to the. So we're going to switch back to the slides now. Once again, just showing how, with our developers, we're constantly running into apps getting leaked to a lot of security-related issues, and we didn't really have a way to do that. With MAM with enrollment, MAM without enrollment, we can actually now not only allow the developers to be happy because they can distribute their apps any way they want. They can send people to the public app store. They can send people to HockeyApp. We can also distribute them through the company portal app, which we also do internally at Microsoft, and have the apps come from HockeyApp into company portal. We distribute them, have an easy-to-find app store with Intune managed devices where they can go download them and apply the MAM policy just like we did just now.
And most important, don't block our developers from innovating by fighting with IT all the time. We really don't want a war between developers and IT. We want them to work together, with IT playing the role of being the gatekeepers for security and making sure everything within our company is secured, and with the developers being able to push builds on every commit, distribute them to all the employees without any restrictions and those fights from the past. We do no longer want this. So with this, I want to wrap up this talk. We have talked about 4 products today: Visual Studio Team Services, which is our agile pipeline for work item management, version control, and of course, build and release management. Xamarin Test Cloud, our solution to test apps in the cloud. And of course, you can test the wrapped app in the cloud as well. You just add your test, you just add the 1111 pin code to your test cases, and you test the same security even on the cloud on real devices. That's a huge benefit of MAM versus MDM, because we cannot simply enroll the test cloud devices into MDM, because then every customer would have a separate MDM setup. And then we showed HockeyApp to distribute, monitor, and of course monitor your apps and engage with your users, but most importantly, to quickly be able to send a build to whoever in your company wants or needs access to that build. And last but not least, Intune to protect your apps and data, your company secrets, and make sure nothing leaks out of those dogfooding builds. Now, last but not least, I want to talk a little bit more. We have talked a lot about automated testing and automated processes, but DevOps is more than that. DevOps is the union of people, process, and products to enable a continuous stream of value to our end users. It is a mindset that we have to adopt. We have to learn that committing code and creating a build automatically is not a penalty on us, it's a benefit. And of course, if we only do that and don't ship value, we haven't really reached anything. At the end of the day, the value has to reach our employees, our end users, and our stakeholders to have an effect of that mobile DevOps process that affects everybody. And here at Microsoft, we live and learn the same process. So all the tools that we are shipping to you, of course, also apply continuous delivery, and it's up to you to give us feedback and engage with us and tell us what we are doing wrong and what we can do better to deliver more value to you guys. If you want to get started, we have 3 simple links here on the left side, and then we are also working on a next generation DevOps product. So if you have ideas, if you want to give us feedback, if you want to engage with us, please go to that AKMS Mobile Magic link. Fill out a quick survey. If you leave your email, one of my PMs is happy to engage with you, get all your concerns, answer all your questions. With that, I leave that open, but with that, we are open for Q&A for all your questions.
I will say that if you do have questions, please let us know. I had to shorten a little bit for time constraints, but if you'd like to see any of this up close and kind of see what we did, feel free to stay afterwards or shoot us a message. We'll have cards up here and maybe some handouts so we can would be glad to take your questions or comments right now. There are microphones in the middle of the room, or you can just yell, I guess.
And we have stickers. If you want a sticker, please come to the stage.
They're HockeyApp stickers. We unfortunately don't have any Intune stickers because I know that's what you really want.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Oh.
Yeah. Please come to a mic so everybody in the room can understand your questions.
Can we get the microphone turned on? Try that one.
So the question I have is, do you have any integration with Eclipse for the test cloud?
With a what?
Eclipse?
So we don't have an integration that you can use from the UI, but Test Cloud has an API and a CLI. So if you use Eclipse to build your Android or Java apps, you can simply, you get a string that you can paste into your console to upload the app, and then obviously in Eclipse you can run a post-build task to automate this from Eclipse.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Question on Intune. In Intune, does it allow you to do per app VPN tunnel? So like when you did that secure browser, if it was an internal resource?
Yeah, there's actually a couple different ways that we could do that. And so we have per app VPN, we have application proxies, not necessarily with Intune, but we can manage those through different sections of the Enterprise Mobility Suite. So I can definitely, if you want to hang out, I can give you a lot more information on that.
Okay, cool, thanks.
If you have multiple user identity repositories and you have different mobile applications going to different authentication sources, how is that managed within iTunes or
Okay, so you're saying you have different...
Let's say we have LDAP for one user
Okay.
repository and AD for another, and we have different applications that need different user
Do you use
authentication
ADFS
sources.
as the defederated?
Yeah, we use
Okay.
ADFS.
So yeah, I mean, we can definitely go through the federated services login. I'd have to kind of probably whiteboard your exact scenario.
Okay.
I don't want to just say yes because I don't really, it can get very complicated
Okay.
depending on, a lot of different factors. But if you want to hang out, we can whiteboard it or just message me and we can definitely talk about it as well.
Okay, thanks.
But to be sure, I mean, we have the
Yeah.
app wrapping, which makes it really easy to integrate. But if you have already the ADAL library or the SDK, you can use that too and skip the app wrapping process, instead customize the full integration by going through the SDK steps. So you basically tell us which AD you're using, and this way you can combine different ADs with MAN.
With the app wrapping though, for example, like when he wrapped that, before I couldn't log in with my corporate accounts. Once it's wrapped, immediately can log in with ADFS login.
Okay, all right, thanks.
In terms of automation, is there any thought process about taking it from an app from a test process and then having it automatically published into Intune?
Yes.
Can you repeat that one time?
So I'm looking kind of end-to-end process. You have apps that you're publishing into HockeyApp for testing capability.
Yeah.
Is there I'm looking for kind of the next button to say, I want
Yes.
to publish this into Intune.
So currently, there are ways to get it into Intune through, like at Microsoft, we basically have an automated system that puts it into a TFS workload or VSTS, et cetera. But with the new Ibiza portal with our APIs being made available, I don't know if you were at our session yesterday where I actually demoed PowerShell, basically going out to a store, pulling down all the apps from PowerShell, and having them automatically populate in Intune. And I can actually, once again, show you that. I did a demo yesterday, and it's session 2138, I believe was our session number. And there's a full video where I can actually show you, using PowerShell, how we'll be able to automate that with
when we get to Ibiza?
Ibiza, right.
2138?
What's that?
The session was 2138?
2138, right.
In general, with release management, you can really automate everything, right? As I said, we are able to push apps from release management, so VSTS, into the App Store, like that's Apple's App Store, into Google Play, into the Windows Store, and as soon as Intune has an API, you can either run a PowerShell script, or I'm sure we also get a VSTS extension that does that automatically for you. Everything that has an API can be connected to release management.
So what is the status of HockeyApp and UWP apps, the modern Windows apps?
So UWP apps are supported by HockeyApp. We have a UWP SDK that allows you to collect telemetry and also crash reports with .NET Native symbolication. Side loading is possible. You have to upload your AppX file. And since Windows 10 anniversary update, you actually have one-click install even on desktop. The only catch is you need a paid certificate. Otherwise, your users have to go through the pain of installing a certificate either from the properties of the AppX bundle or separately. So the kind of like the only challenge really for UWP apps is the signing, and otherwise we got you covered. You can simply similar to how I've shown the upload of the APA file. You can also upload the AppX bundle by just drag and drop to Edge.
And the signing is only semantic still?
So the Visual Studio already signs your build, right? The build is signed, but it's signed with a developer certificate, and the developer certificate is not in a valid root chain. Your root chain is basically your custom chain. So if you move that AppX to a different PC or Windows phone, it won't install because it's not trusting that chain. So that's why you have to go through certificate installation if you use that developer certificate. And it kind of works like internally if you're only going to your team members, right? You do that only once because it's the same certificate for all the builds.